Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. Now we are in Exodus chapter 16. Now, despite the glorious deliverance, right, no other people have experienced the kind of deliverance that God wrought with Israel, right? Breaking the neck of Israel, as it were. I mean, of course, in our nation, African Americans wish they'd had that kind of deliverance. Slavery ended in America with the bloodiest war, right? But God broke the back of Egypt without hurting Israel. If you remember, a lot of the plagues didn't touch them. They march out in triumphal victory as the Egyptians were burying their dead, the result of the plague of the firstborn. God leads them to the Red Sea. And this was a deception for Pharaoh because they thought, now we got him. And God parts the Red Sea. They marched through on dry ground. Pharaoh foolishly tries to enter and is drowned. Okay, what we're going to see now is that we have now advanced and we're in the second month, the middle of the second month. So it has been a month and a half since they have been free. And I said last time we're going to see, we'll be able to chart we get like a time chart. God is only going to focus on what's important for us to know, that he thinks that's important for us to know. And so at this point, this is a month and a half, and now they're going to grumble again. But they're going to say some shocking things. And the one thing I want to say is that you see, whenever you have a kind of bondage, now sin itself is bad. That's what you see right here, right? As I said, our journey through the Bible, sin itself is bad. The effect, see. But whenever you have, and think about this, for Israel, 430 years of trauma, slavery. And even despite seeing the miracles, that paganism, the trauma, the effect of that, this first generation will not let it go. They will die in the wilderness because of it. That's the sad part. And so let's get in it. All right, so all right. Chapter 16. Let me see here. Hold on one second. All right. It says, verse 1, the entire Israelite community departed from Elim and came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had left the land of Egypt. Now keep this in mind that their yearly month began when at their deliverance, at their Passover, the deliverance, when they marched out of Egypt. That was the first day of their calendar year. So, verse 2, the entire Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Now this is amazing, right? What did they grumble about? Verse 3. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by pots of meat and ate all the bread we wanted. Instead, you brought us into the wilderness to make this whole assembly die of hunger. This is grievous because they are complaining, right? They have no food. Well, put it like this. They're probably growing low on food. And then probably the food they have is just, just not enough. But then they make up this lie. Now, this is going to get worse as we go on. It's going to get worse until like, for example, until we get to the golden calf incident. Right? So that's going to be one of the worst things. And they won't even stop there. We're going to get to, even when they get to the point when God says, go over into the land. Right? Go over into the land. They will seal, this generation will seal their doom for that. And it's amazing here. And it starts with these little things here. Notice they're complaining. Paul talks about this complaining that ultimately led, we'll see this in the book of Numbers, it led to snakes biting them, okay? But, so again, let's kind of go back and just remember why they're free, right? So remember why they are free. And they are free because God heard their groanings, right? So when we think about, we come to 430 years, right? Around 430 years, just a little before, right? Moses is born. So Moses is born 40 years prior. And then he spends that 40 years, right? He grows up in Egypt, and then he spends that 40, when he's 40 years old, he tried to go out and deliver Israel, but then, then he kills an Egyptian and flees for 40 years, right? So 390 years is right around this when that Moses, right, at the time Moses is born, and now around this time here, a couple of months, you figure that God appears to them around 430 years, right, a little before. They have been in anguish. They've been harshly treated. Slavery does that. See, slavery does that. And God is saying, okay, I am here to deliver them. He delivers them with a mighty hand. 10 plagues, the Red Sea, he delivers them. And for them to say this, oh, it was so great in Egypt. Right? Oh, we sat by the pots of meat and ate all the bread we wanted. No, you didn't. So it's kind of an insult here. But anyway, then the Lord said to Moses, verse 4, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you. The people are to eat out the people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. This way I will test them to see whether or not they will follow my instructions. They won't. At least some of them won't. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they to bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days. So now, we're going to see, just in a moment, God is going to rain bread. He's going to give them quail to eat, and he's going to rain bread. What he's saying to them is that, okay, each family unit, or you can say even that they are to measure out for each person only what that person needs. I think it's going to come out as they're going to say 2 quarts. In other words, they're not to store up anything. And then he's going to even instruct them that when they bring it in, eat it, don't leave any for the night. We're going to see they will do just that. They are not to gather more, right? And then he said, and then on the, so not only are they to gather only enough what they need, they're not to let it remain, because he's going to tell them it's going to stink. You're going to have maggots. Then he says, but then on the 6th day, gather twice as much for the what? Sabbath day rest. And they will violate that. So, and on that day, it won't stink, right? So if you gather the second, it won't on the seventh day. This is all should be a sign to them, how God, to obey God, but it won't. All right, so verse 6. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, this evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you will see the Lord's glory, because he has heard your complaints about him. For who are we that you complain about us? Moses continued, the Lord will give you meat to eat this evening, and more than enough bread in the morning. For he has heard the complaints that you are raising against him. Who are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord, right? So Moses kind of throws a little dig at him, Verse 9, then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints. Notice, y'all not getting off the hook here. You complained. And it was, think about it, right? You had it better in Egypt. But that, again, and this kind of complaint is going to get worse for them. To the point where the golden calf is going to be there, where they're going to try to go back to Egypt. So anyway, stay tuned for that, right? Verse 10, as Aaron was speaking, the entire Israelite community, they turned towards the wilderness, and there a cloud of the Lord's glory appeared. The Lord spoke to Moses, I have heard the complaints of the Israelites, and tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will eat bread until you are full. Then you will know that I am Yahweh, your God. And I think this phrase, Yahweh, your God, is purposeful, because as I said before, they will not, to me, get over the idolatry, the paganism in which they've been indoctrinated with. They just won't. But yet here God is showing that he is different than the pagan worship, the pagan gods. All right, but they, All right, verse 11. Then the Lord spoke to Moses. I have heard the complaints of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will eat bread until you are full. Then you will know that I am Yahweh your God. I just put like that. They should know it, but they won't learn this. So at evening quail came. So that at evening quail came and covered the camp. In the morning there was a layer of dew all around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated, there was a fine flake on the surface, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they asked one another, what is it? Because they didn't know what it is. Now, that's what the word manna actually means. What is it, right? And Moses told him, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Now Jesus is going to quote this in John chapter 6, and you should see the comparison. You should jump to John chapter 6 and see the comparison right here. And they say, well, Moses gave us bread to eat, and Jesus is going to tell them, well, Moses didn't really give you the bread from heaven. He gave you bread from the sky, but he didn't give you bread from heaven. I'm the bread from heaven. Verse 16. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather as much of it as each person needs to eat. You may take 2 quarts per individual, according to the number of people each of you has in his tent. So if you got 4, then you ought to have 8 quarts. If you got 16, so forth and so on. So the Israelites did this. Some gathered a lot, some gathered a little. Paul will quote this, by the way, in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and 9. He said, verse 18, when they measured it by quarts, the person who gathered it has no surplus, and the person who gathered a little had no shortage. Each gathered as much as he needed to eat. And that's what the whole purpose was for doing this journey here. Verse 19, and Moses said to them, no one is to let any of it remain until the morning. But they didn't listen to Moses, and some people left part of it until the morning, and it bred worms and smell. Therefore Moses was angry with them. They gathered it every morning. Each gathered as much as he needed to eat. But when the sun grew hot, it melted. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much food, 4 quarts apiece. And all the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. And he told them, this is what the Lord had said: tomorrow is the day of complete rest and a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil, and set it aside, everything left over to be kept until the morning. Now again, you also see sort of the rules of the Sabbath day. That you were not to cook on the Sabbath day. You were to do no work on the Sabbath day. Tupperware would have been great during this time here, right? But anyway, so in other words, so everything, all you do is just to be able to just bring it out and eat it. So verse 24. So they set it aside into the morning as Moses commanded, and it didn't smell or have any maggots in it. So this should have been a sign to them how God is God. Verse 25. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you won't find any of it in the field. For 6 days you may gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Yet on the seventh day, some people went out to gather, but didn't find any. Unbelievable, right? This is just unbelievable. But you find this even today, right, with people. People will not follow the rules, right? The very simplest of rules, people will not follow. Verse 21, the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and instructions? Understand that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, on the Sabbath day, he will give you 2 days worth of bread. Each of you stay where you are, and no one is to leave his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. Follow this, because later on in a few chapters we're going to see a man who will gather, he will still go out and work, and he will be actually executed. But understand, even before the giving of the law, God is telling them, you rest on the Sabbath day. Verse 31, the house of Israel named the substance manna. It resembled coriander seed, was white and tasted like wafers made with honey. So sweet bread, right? But you know what's going to happen? They're going to get tired of that. You know, human nature is something, right? Human nature is funny, because we will get tired of the least, right? We would get tired, I mean, even the best food we get tired of if you eat it every day. Verse 32, Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded. 2 quarts of it are to be preserved throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt. And Moses told Aaron, take a container and put 2 quarts of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be preserved throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron placed it before the testimony to be preserved. Now it's kind of interesting. We will see later that there will actually be a few items left over, that they were to keep. Now, could you imagine if we found that jar of manna today? Now, later, everything will be destroyed in judgment. So if someone was to try to say they found the jar of the manna, please don't buy it. And don't listen to these crooked preachers that say they got they've anointed some manna, and if you send them, you know, $1,000, you know, you can get a piece of manna and all that kind of stuff. There are crooked preachers like that. Okay. But it would be interesting if you was to see that. Had they followed the commands of the Lord, there are going to be several things that they would have, you would have been able to see, physically see. Manna is one of them. Aaron's rod, we're going to see, is another one. There's a couple of things that they were to store up. All right, and this is like the beginning of it. Aaron's bud, that rod, all right, the manna. All right, verse 33. Moses told Aaron, take the container and put 2 quarts of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to be reserved throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron placed the testimony to be observed. Verse 35, the Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they came to inhabit the land. They ate manna until they reached the borders of the land of Canaan. 2 quarts or a tenth of an ephod. Okay, whatever ephod. So whatever that means, right? Now, a couple of things here. One, the manna and the miraculous signs were never really to be the normal, right? So once, and we're going to see this, when they cross over the Jordan, the manna will cease. It will not fall again. They will not have this miraculous sign every day. They're going to have it for 40 years. And then the second thing is, who wrote this, right? Who wrote this last, right? Notice he said they ate this until. Now, Moses could be writing this prophetically. That's one option. Joshua could have wrote this, or one of the other scribes. It's just kind of a trivial thing there. All right, guys. We're going to pick up with chapter 17 in our next study. I will see you then.